the very moment Harrison chose to let it go and walk away from him. Ryan carelessly ran his mouth. He said that if it wasn't Shauna, there would be hundreds of other girls just like her, and that sentence successfully awakened the dark instincts within him. No longer intending to let it go, Harrison turned back, removed the lid of the toilet tank, and, despite Ryan's pleas for mercy, did not hesitate to strike the man he considered scum. Once he had calmed down, Harrison was covered in blood. He quickly washed his face and changed into a different set of clothes. Harrison managed to bring Shauna back to her room. Then, returning with a food service cart, he stopped by the supply room to get towels, cleaning agents, and the necessary tools. He went back to that room, put on his headphones, and began cleaning up his own crime scene. Harrison dragged Ryan's now cold body to the side, spread the torn plastic curtain from their earlier struggle onto the floor, and wrapped him in it. He stuffed him under the bottom shelf of the food service cart, wiped down every possible surface that might bear his fingerprints, replaced the toilet tank lid with a new one, hung a new curtain, and then, following his usual habit, Harrison successfully wheeled Ryan down to the kitchen without being seen by a single soul. Recalling the instructions Dexter had once given him, he began stripping Ryan's clothes and dismembered him into 9 parts to make disposal easier. With a large kitchen knife, Harrison effortlessly segmented the body lying on the table, fresh blood streaming down onto the floor. In the midst of it, he failed to notice a single drop of blood that had splattered onto the ceiling above where he stood. The dismemberment process was complete. Harrison placed all the parts into garbage bags, tied them with his familiar knots, thoroughly cleaned the kitchen, and then brought everything to the garbage collection point. It was only when the garbage truck arrived and took him away that Harrison finally breathed a sigh of relief, forgetting to check the ceiling above where he had stood earlier while cutting up Ryan. The first episode begins with a brief recap of events from the previous seasons. It also serves as a key to unlock the memories when Dexter Morgan is reunited with his son, Harrison Morgan, a boy who had struggled to escape from grim foster homes and made his way back to find his father and ask why he had abandoned them years ago. Harrison realizes there is something hidden deep within himself and confesses everything honestly to Dexter. When speaking to Dexter, he told the boy that he had once felt the same way, and that he himself hadn't known how to deal with it. He assured Harrison that he would tell him everything, starting with his next murder, the first case Harrison would have to face. In this case, Dexter was successfully caught by the police. But then, faced with his own son, he was shot by Harrison, a bullet piercing through him and sending him into a deep coma, where he experienced all kinds of hallucinations and visions of loved ones who had once been by his side. As for Harrison, after pulling the trigger, he left that place behind and went to New York to start a new life, a fresh beginning for himself, free from any trace of a dark passenger. Entering the storyline of Dexter, Resurrection, we begin with events from 10 weeks earlier, when Dexter was still lying unconscious in a hospital bed after being shot by his beloved son. At this point, he begins to enter his own hallucinations. The first person he encounters is an old man, and together they speak of each other's mistakes, stories shared from one killer to another. There is also a scene where Dexter's wife appears to have died in a bathtub filled with blood, not someone else's, but her own. That image appears, with the surroundings distorted, yet the inside of the bathtub is shockingly clear. The scene shifts, and the person standing before Dexter is no longer the old man, but an old friend, someone who is either digging or covering up a grave right beside where Dexter is standing. This man praised Dexter's actions, how he killed the scum of society in order to save innocent people from dying. If Dexter hadn't done it, countless innocents would have died at the hands of those monsters. Then he let Dexter see behind him, graves bearing the names of the loved ones he once cherished. That threw Dexter into chaos. He staggered, then fell backward, landing perfectly into the grave that the other man had dug earlier. The scene then shifts to the hospital room, where he still lies motionless, unable to awaken from his coma. As for Harrison, after arriving in New York, he took a job as a baggage handler at a large hotel. The alarm clock rang, and Harrison got out of bed to prepare for a new day. He had been secretly sleeping in one of the hotel rooms where he worked, and just as he safely opened the door to leave, he was called back by a housekeeper friend of his. That was Elsa Rivera, someone who could be considered close to Harrison at his workplace. Elsa handed him an envelope with a joyful expression. Inside was Harrison's GED passing notice. The two chatted happily for a while before Harrison said goodbye and left. Elsa also helped him check which rooms were vacant so he could spend the night there. After that, as part of his routine, Harrison took the staff elevator down to the basement to store his backpack. He greeted all his colleagues in the kitchen, grabbed a bit of food, and even offered to help someone by taking out 2 trash bags from the table. In this scene, the way Harrison tightly tied the trash bags also became a recurring habit that would be seen repeatedly in his actions later on. After disposing of the 2 trash bags at the collection point, Harrison confidently walked through the hotel's front entrance to begin his new workday. Although he arrived right on time, he still couldn't avoid the disapproving look from his manager. It wasn't until a regular guest named Ryan Foster, a sexual predator, and his girlfriend approached and gave Harrison a few compliments that the manager finally let it slide. As those 2 guests walked away, 2 other male guests approached, guests who had booked a room on the 7th floor. With his job in mind, Harrison promptly took their suitcases and accompanied them to their room. Inside the elevator, they exchanged a few words, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary until the elevator doors slowly opened. In front of him was not the usual hotel hallway, but instead, it was a scene all too familiar to him, the snowy forest where he had pulled the trigger to end his father's life. A long trail of blood stretched across the ground, leaving him frozen in place, unable to move. It wasn't until one of the 2 guests behind him spoke up that Harrison snapped back to reality. He quickly apologized, took them to their room, and left. In that hallway, Harrison happened to run into Shauna, a beautiful girl with blonde hair. She had come to the hotel to attend a medical conference. She told Harrison that she was lost and couldn't find the event. As a hotel staff member, Harrison quickly helped her get to the lobby where the conference was taking place. They also exchanged a few words along the way. As for Dexter, he had remained in a coma for 10 full weeks, and once again, hallucinations returned to him. In his mind, many faces from his past urged him to live. They drew out what truly existed deep within him, and ultimately, Dexter triumphed over death, waking up for real in his hospital bed, not just within his mind as he had in previous episodes. The doctor spoke with him about his condition, explaining how he had narrowly escaped death and how miraculous it was. Before the doctor left, Dexter asked about his son, but aside from viewers like us, no one in Iron Lake had any idea where Harrison had gone. Harrison's shift had stretched into late evening. While he was busy with his luggage cart, Ryan called him over to help carry a heavily intoxicated girl into the elevator. That girl was no stranger. It was Shauna, the same one Harrison had met earlier that afternoon. Once inside the elevator, Ryan asked him to press the button for his floor. Troubled by what he heard, Harrison questioned the man, who was supposedly engaged. Questioning didn't change anything, and Harrison had no choice but to follow the guest's request and press his floor number inside the elevator. Once they reached the room, Ryan even stuffed a bill into Harrison's hand to keep him quiet. At first, Harrison intended to leave, but upon hearing Shauna's sounds of resistance from inside the room, he changed his mind and used his master key card to barge in. At first, Harrison only intended to exchange a few words with Ryan and take Shauna away, but because of Ryan's nature, the situation quickly escalated into a fight. Ryan shoved him, causing him to fall into the bathtub, but Harrison quickly gained the upper hand, pinning him to the floor and landing blow after blow on his once handsome face. When he could no longer endure another punch, with his mouth full of blood, Ryan finally said that Harrison could take Shauna with him. The very moment Harrison chose to let go and walk away from him, Ryan couldn't help but run his filthy mouth. He said that if it wasn't Shauna, there would be hundreds of other girls just like her. That sentence successfully stirred the dark instinct within Harrison. No longer willing to let it go, he turned back, removed the lid of the toilet tank, and, ignoring Ryan's pleas for mercy, struck down without hesitation on the man he now saw as nothing more than scum. Once he'd regained his composure, Harrison noticed his clothes were soaked in blood. With a steady breath, he rinsed the blood off his face and changed into a clean uniform. He carefully escorted Shauna, still unconscious but safe, back to her room. Then, as if moving through muscle memory, he returned with the food cart, stopped by the supply room, and gathered towels, cleaning agents, and other necessary tools. Back at the scene, he slipped on his headphones, turned on some music, and quietly began erasing every trace of what had happened. Calm, methodical, and disturbingly precise, Harrison dragged Ryan's cold, lifeless body to the side, using the torn plastic shower curtain from their earlier struggle to spread across the floor and wrap him up tightly. He stuffed the body beneath a room service cart, methodically wiping down every possible surface where he might have left fingerprints. He replaced the broken toilet tank lid with a new one, swapped out the old curtain for a fresh one, and, following the instincts he seemed almost born with, successfully wheeled Ryan down to the kitchen without a single soul noticing. Remembering the lessons Dexter had once drilled into him, Harrison began undressing Ryan's lifeless body and methodically dividing it into 9 parts for easier disposal. With the large kitchen knife gripped firmly in his hand, he worked with unsettling efficiency, segmenting the body atop the table while fresh blood poured onto the floor in thick streams. But in his focused routine, Harrison didn't notice a single droplet of blood that had splashed upward, landing silently on the ceiling above him, just out of view. The dismemberment complete, Harrison placed each part of Ryan's body into thick black garbage bags, tying him off with practiced, familiar knots. He meticulously scrubbed the kitchen from top to bottom, ensuring every visible trace of blood was erased. When satisfied with the cleanup, he loaded the bags onto the food cart and wheeled them out to the designated trash collection point. Only once the garbage truck arrived and carried it all away did Harrison finally exhale in relief. The burden seemed lifted, at least for now, but in that moment of satisfaction, he forgot to look up, to the ceiling above the spot where he had stood while carving up Ryan, where a single droplet of blood still clung, quietly betraying him. Back in Iron Lake, Dexter had begun physical therapy, determined to recover as quickly as possible, but ever since his near-death experience, his late father's presence had become more persistent. Harry appeared everywhere, always ready to strike up a conversation with his beloved son. What surprised Dexter even more was the unexpected visit from Teddy Reed, a local police officer. Teddy handed him a worn photograph. It was Angela, taken not long before she disappeared. Teddy revealed that after Angela discovered Logan was the one who shot Dexter in his cell, she had fallen into a deep emotional spiral. It turned out that Angela herself had also shot Dexter, and that, Teddy explained, was one of the main reasons he had come to see him. He gently asked whether Dexter wanted to file a formal complaint against the Iron Lake Police Department. But Dexter, ever calculating, knew that pursuing it might unravel things best left buried, so he declined. As Teddy left, Dexter watched him go with a strangely light heart, a rare moment of genuine peace flickering across his face. In New York, the garbage truck had discovered a part of Ryan's body and quickly called the police to handle the matter. Not long after, Officer Wallace and Detective Claudette from the Major Crimes Unit promptly arrived at the scene and recovered the body fragment. Detective Claudette, with her rather unconventional working style, managed to locate the rest of the victim's body not long after, just by matching the identical knots on the mouths of the garbage bags. They quickly concluded that this wasn't a robbery homicide, as the expensive gold ring on the victim's pinky finger was still intact and hadn't been taken. And soon enough, the police team identified the victim, tracked down the hotel where Harrison was working, and sealed off the room Ryan had previously rented. Curious about the investigation, and unnerved, knowing he was the killer, Harrison quickly showed up in front of the room where he had committed the crime. As an amateur, unable to shake the haunting memory, he panicked for a moment when he thought he saw the bloodied figure of Ryan staring directly at him. Startled, he stumbled back a few steps and quickly walked away. As for Dexter, today he was visited by someone he had absolutely no desire to see. The moment he laid eyes on the man, he could only hope that what he was seeing was just a figment of his imagination. That man was Angel Batista. They spoke about the Bay Harbor Butcher case, and it became clear that everything Angela had done was ultimately driven by a desire to get revenge on Dexter. The next day, when Dexter read the news about a wealthy man who had been murdered, dismembered in the exact same manner he used to employ, the first person that came to his mind was his own son. Deceiving both the hospital and Angel Batista, Dexter successfully escaped and made his way to New York to find his son. At the end of the episode, we see a mysterious blonde woman breaking into someone's home, or rather, into a killer's lair. Using a lockpick set, she successfully unlocked the door, explored the house, and eventually discovered the person's collection. She placed a letter inside, carefully returned everything to its original position, and quietly exited. Once outside, she made a phone call to report that the mission had been completed. Episode 2 is also when Dexter finally arrives in New York and spots his beloved son standing in front of the hotel where the boy is working. Dexter doesn't approach him. Instead, he chooses to watch from a distance, quietly observing and protecting the son he holds so dear. It was a dark night like any other in New York. As your car drivers began their usual late-night shifts, Stanley was one of them. He accepted a ride request from someone named Jack. A man wearing a hat and coat quickly got into the car. Assuming it was the correct passenger, Stanley started to drive. As the ride progressed, the two exchanged a few words, but the passenger seemed displeased. Then Stanley's phone pinged. It was a message from Jack, asking where he was, but by then, it was already too late. The man in the back seat had switched positions and used a steel wire to restrain Stanley. In a panic, Stanley pleaded for his life, begging the man not to kill him, saying he had 3 young children waiting for him at home. But it didn't matter. By the next morning, his body was found inside the car, his severed head cradled in his own hands. Back to the Morgans, Dexter still refused to approach his son directly, choosing instead to protect the boy from afar. That night, after waiting for his son to finish his shift, Dexter slipped around to the back entrance of the hotel, taking advantage of a momentary lapse by one of the staff. He managed to sneak inside. When confronted by a housekeeper, he remained calm and simply said he was looking for some toilet paper, then quickly made his way into the emergency stairwell. For someone like Dexter, once a seasoned blood spatter analyst, having to climb stairs and search for clues from outside the official investigation was no easy task. After scaling 11 floors via the emergency stairwell, he finally reached the crime scene. Standing just beyond the yellow tape, he admitted to himself, it felt strange not being on the inside of the investigation anymore. Once inside the room, Dexter was genuinely surprised. His son, Harrison, had cleaned up the crime scene so thoroughly that even Dexter himself had to silently admire the work. Finding nothing that could incriminate his son, Dexter was preparing to leave when 2 homicide detectives suddenly appeared at the door. With no other option, he quickly hid himself inside the closet. While hiding in the closet, Dexter realized that his son had killed a rapist. And if that was true, it meant Harrison was beginning to form his own moral code, a new set of rules. Just like Dexter once did. To catch someone like Harrison, it would take a truly skilled detective. These 2 outside, nowhere near that level. Not long after, the detectives left the room, and Dexter quickly slipped out to continue searching for clues elsewhere. Following the staff passageway, Dexter successfully found his way down to the hotel kitchen. With his trained eyes, just a quick glance was enough for him to realize this was the place where his son had taken down the rapist. Slipping out before anyone could notice him, he approached the manager and casually asked about the kitchen's closing time. Then, he took a seat and waited, calm, calculated, for the right moment to act. And finally, the moment he'd been waiting for arrived. The kitchen staff began leaving one by one, just like before. Dexter waited until no one was paying attention, then slipped through the back entrance again. Stepping into the room, he gave it a quick assessment, and he had to admit, his son had done an impressive job. As he muttered to himself, he really is following in my footsteps. But everyone makes mistakes. Everyone misses something. Eventually, Dexter spotted it, a single drop of blood on the ceiling. Quietly, methodically, he removed it before anyone could notice. As for Harrison, not a single day passed without him being haunted by the memory of pulling the trigger on his own father. Tonight was no different. Once again, that twisted nightmare returned, jolting him awake at 2 a.m. Unable to fall back asleep and unsure what else to do, Harrison texted his friend to go for a walk around the city. The reply came almost instantly. They'd meet at the parking garage. Surprised to receive a text from Harrison at such an odd hour, his friend threw in a few sarcastic remarks but didn't hesitate to pull the car out of the garage. While passing the back of the hotel, Harrison suddenly caught a glimpse of Dexter, just for a split second, and then he was gone. Confused and unsure, Harrison had no choice but to get in the car and drive off with his friend, heading out to enjoy the night before the morning came. But no matter how much fun he had, Harrison couldn't shake the haunting guilt of what he'd done. Ryan's memory still clung to him, creeping in whenever his mind was unguarded. Hoping to put an end to it all, he made a decision to sell Dexter's car, the one he now owned, and he would do it first thing the next morning, as soon as he was sober enough to follow through. Having dealt with all the incriminating evidence, Dexter returned to his car, planning to finally leave, only to witness it being towed for illegal parking. With no other option, he had to call in your car to reach the impound lot where his vehicle was taken. The driver, a black man, seemed noticeably cautious as Dexter approached. Even before he got in, the man's demeanor suggested a strong sense of wariness. He even asked for Dexter's name to confirm he was picking up the right person. It wasn't until a little while later that the driver, Blessing Kamara, began to lower his guard and chat with Dexter. Their conversation drifted from one topic to another, until eventually the man brought up the recent string of murders. He apologized to Dexter for being so cautious, then explained that the serial killer currently on the loose seemed to be targeting rideshare drivers like him. There had already been 7 murders, each one disturbingly similar. The victims were all decapitated, and the killer had been dubbed the Dark Passenger. Just hearing that name made Dexter flinch a little. All he could think about now was copywriting his other personality. No other killer had the right to touch that name. After some more small talk, they arrived at the impound lot. Before parting ways, Dexter made a decision. He asked the man if he could continue driving your car for him, a favor he'd soon make use of. The man was surprisingly generous. He even sent Dexter a registration link for the driver program, along with his own home address. He said he hoped Dexter would stop by sometime, maybe meet a few new friends. Hearing the invitation, Dexter hesitated and politely declined, but the kind-hearted your car driver repeated his offer once more. From that point on, Dexter's mission shifted, no longer just about parenting, now it was also about protecting the copyright of the name, Dark Passenger, for himself. Cut to a man struggling at an ATM. No matter what he tries, he just can't seem to withdraw any money. Suddenly, a blonde woman appears behind him, the same woman we saw at the beginning of the film. The man's demeanor shifts instantly. He's clearly terrified of her. With just a few quiet commands, she has him obediently following her out to the parking lot. Through their conversation, it becomes clear that the man is pleading for something, likely a second chance. They mention a third person, possibly their mutual boss. Unfortunately, the bad news is confirmed. He's been fired. The woman firmly tells him not to contact them again. Despite his desperate begging, she refuses. Then, she pulls out a baseball bat embedded with nails, a brutal-looking weapon that appears to have once belonged to the man. After the exchange, despite their disagreement, the woman decides to walk away, leaving the man behind, still unwilling to accept the outcome. He desperately tries to hold on, only to be struck hard in the head with that very same nail-covered baseball bat. Dexter dug deeper into the articles and reports about the killer. Eventually, he decided to attend the party at the home of the your car driver, hoping to gather more clues about the person impersonating him. There, he met a survivor and watched a clip the man had recorded. But the killer's face was hidden beneath a hood, leaving his identity obscured. With no time to think, Dexter quickly sent the video to his own messages and continued participating in the party. The family even introduced him to a place to stay, an old house where the your car driver's daughter used to live. After checking it out and realizing he might be staying in New York for a while, Dexter made up his mind. He started redoing his paperwork to reclaim his real identity. He even bought a new car to begin working here. Thanks to the video sent by the survivor, Dexter was able to find a clue about the killer's identity and successfully discovered that the man was Ronald Schmidt. At the end of the episode, determined to prevent any more deaths, Dexter stood outside the man's company late that night and managed to save the your car driver. However, the killer still slipped away, escaping Dexter's grasp once again. That was the recap of the first 2 episodes of Dexter: Resurrection. Dexter Morgan is back, this time in New York. But can he repair his relationship with Harrison and finally escape the shadows of his past? What do you think about this long-awaited return? Is Dexter truly a changed man? Or is the Dark Passenger still in control? Let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the recap of the next episodes. Drop a comment below to share your thoughts or predictions about what's coming next for Dexter and this new circle of killers. See you in the next video.